Kingambit and force the terrestrialization on the Frigga. Then it's not onto the Blood Moon here. But we are getting into this game one of the Dortmund Regional Championships here. We are going to see Nick lead out with the Fluttermane and the Kingambit, and then Florian leading with the Fluttermane and the Ogerpon.
So with the double Fluttermane is on the field right now. We still don't know what the speed interactions are between the two Fluttermane, which would make a huge difference here, because at the moment both trainers are probably forced to kind of go for their terror to make sure they can't get KO'd by a Shadow Ball from the return. And it also kind of boosts up the damage with those fairy type attacks as well. And some Fluttermanes can just drop to a Terra Fairy boosted Moonblast with that Choice Specs at the same time.
Yeah, we're going to see if anyone terrestrializes here, and we are going to get straight into it here. Terrestrialization coming out from Nick's side of the field, and it looks like it is on to that Fluttermane, terrestrializing into the Fairy type, boosting those attacks, supported by the Choice Specs item. Going to be set up to do some big damage here going into this, and it is going to be the returning terrestrialization as well from Nick. It looks like both players are going to terrestrialize both of their Fluttermanes here. It will come down, like we've mentioned, to which Fluttermane is the faster out of the two.
So at the moment, it seems like Nick's might be the slower, but it could obviously be a speed tie. We'll never know. Yeah, here's another speed tie win. Florian's looking like it is the faster one with that Dazzling Gleam coming straight out of the gate. Massive damage to both targets, meaning a 2-hit KO on both as well. But it's the responding Dazzling Gleam from Nick's end, shattering the health on Florian's end, also doing both over 50% onto that side too. But it's the following Ivy Cudgel, which is enough to KO the Fluttermane on Nick's end. It's now up to the Kingambit to do as responding. See if it can do the same as that Ogerpon on the other side. Can it also pick up a KO right now? It is that Counter Cleave, but it's into the Terra Fairy Fluttermane. Is it enough? No, it's not! Florian comes out of that turn really well.
Yeah, that is a huge turn here from Florian, being able to keep that Fluttermane going forward in this match, getting at least one more turn, potentially with this Fluttermane in that terrestrialized state to do some big damage. But of course, it will be threatened by that Kingambit this turn, because Sucker Punch will be enough to pick up the remaining health on there. And the Ogerpon in a pretty decent position to potentially just protect here, readjust your board position, get something more preferable in on the field to be able to deal with that Kingambit before you bring the Fluttermane in later on. But if you do that, you do leave the Porygon open where it can go for a Trick Room here, and then that'll further support the Kingambit for the rest of the game.
The question is, though, as Florian bought the Ursaluna Blood Moon in the back, perhaps expecting Nick's Trick Room mode to be kind of going off here, which would be a very key play if the Trick Room does go up. Ursaluna then probably get then under speeds based on the training between the two Pokemon, and then you can definitely get a KO with that Earth Power. But it's going to be a Protect first from this Kingambit.
Yeah, the Protect coming out here as we see a Dazzling Gleam fired off once again, not deterred by that Sucker Punch potentially coming out from the Kingambit. Going to be protecting itself this turn, so just into the Porygon 2 and doing some nice, respectable damage. Looking like the Ivy Cudgel is into that Kingambit though, just to ensure a knockout there, but blocked by the Protect. But the Porygon 2 open this turn, goes for a Terra Blast, and it will be into the Fluttermane to pick up a knockout and tie up 3 Pokemon aside going forward.
Yeah, I like that Terra Blast from Nick there. You could obviously see that they could very easily go for a Trick Room there. Kingambit outspeeds the opposing Pokemon on the other side. But Florian's team is very Trick Room based with a lot of slower Pokemon. And arguably, they've probably led with their faster Pokemon at the moment. But it is a third fast Pokemon coming in here. So maybe Nick is needing to consider a Trick Room in the later game at the moment. But the Kingambit, having spent that Protect, it is very much now in range of either target from Florian's end. And perhaps a wasted opportunity too, because Counter Cleave isn't going to be able to come out this turn, but Sucker Punch will. But if Ogerpon just covers up with a Follow Me, then no damage can potentially come out this turn at all. So on Florian's end, Follow Me plus attack with that Urshifu is looking pretty safe at the moment.
Yeah, and you've got a really good answer if you're Florian. Bringing in that Urshifu is a single strike variant. It has got access to the Focus Sash. So it's got a bit of security so it doesn't get knocked out this turn, although it's not really threatened too much, but does pressure a knockout onto both Pokemon on the opposite side of the field. The Ivy Cudgel into the Kingambit, not quite enough to pick up the knockout as the close combat comes out from the Urshifu to take down the Porygon 2.
That is a bulky Kingambit being able to completely sponge up that water attack in that Ivy Cudgel. So it's going to be able to respond now with most likely that Kowtow Cleave straight into the Ogerpon. That is enough for a KO here, and that is 2 KOs apiece now for both trainers.
Yeah, this is not playing out like we expected it to. Fully going at it back and forth here. We have seen the Ogerpon on Florian's side go down here, and the remaining Pokemon that he does have access to is that Incineroar. It is going to be able to drop an Intimidate, which is not something that you would be wanting to do onto a Kingambit that survived that last turn, with the Ogerpon being the remaining Pokemon on Nick's side of the field. And there we go, we see it. The Defiant ability activating and giving it a +1 attack boost.
Now, usually in front of a Fake Out, you could just double protect, spend the Fake Out turn, and then go for the next move. But with an Urshifu there, you just can't do that, which is why a lot of trainers do often kind of lead Incineroar plus Urshifu, because you're able to fire off that offensive pressure because you know your Wicked Blow can go straight through. So there's that Fake Out, no protects as Nick goes for the Sucker Punch into that Urshifu. A good target too. You're going to get a lot of damage before you go down, and you get to break that Focus Sash. Wicked Blow into the Kingambit though, it's definitely going to be enough for a KO, and it's Ogerpon facing down this Urshifu and Incineroar in this endgame.
Yeah, if you are Nick and you can take down that Urshifu this next turn, you're going to be in a good position to close this game up against that Incineroar. But the big question is, can you outspeed? Can you take it down? Or are you going to take and deal with a Wicked Blow in the meantime? The Sucker Punch was a really nice option there to break the Focus Sash, so it sets up this endgame potentially where the Ogerpon can get an Ivy Cudgel off, but it's all a question of, is it going to be enough to do the damage that you require onto this Urshifu?
There's the Sucker Punch to get around potentially if this Ogerpon is actually faster than the Urshifu. Ivy Cudgel into the Urshifu now. Is it enough for KO? No, it's not, but it definitely avoids that critical hit. Flare Blitz now up into the Ogerpon. It hangs on with a slither of HP and that 2 HP, but Incineroar takes the recall, and because both Pokemon on Florian's end survive, this is looking like a bit of a lock now. Ogerpon only has single target moves, so Florian very much in a commanding position to take this game 1.
Yeah, very well played by Florian here. I think it showed from right back on that turn 1 where their Flutterman was able to survive the trade there, didn't lose it, so keeping it in the back, getting a bit more utility out of it going forward, closing it up, and they were trading blows back and forth from start to finish. Florian coming out on top of that. Maybe Nick has to re-look at the strategy, maybe approach it from a different direction, and try and keep a handle on that Flutterman from the start.
Absolutely. There's got to be something to potentially change up in this game 2 for Nick here. I really like the Porygon 2 because it definitely covers for any sort of Trick Room mode that Florian goes for, but we focused so much on that Ursaluna in our discussion that Florian didn't even bring it. Like, it would be showing the other mode there really effectively.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing what you can do, and it can be done by players as well. You can overcommit for maybe expecting one of those big threats, and then your opponent brings completely different options there, and your game plan maybe doesn't play out as well as what you'd like it to. The mind games come into it a bit again today in this next game, because Florian can just switch it up again and go with that Ursaluna, thinking maybe I could probably get away with getting the Trick Room set up turn 1 and get that Blood Moon Ursaluna in early, and maybe keep something like the Urshifu, the Fluttermane for the late game, and then bring them in once the Blood Moons kind of paved the way a little bit.
Yeah, that's a good idea, because the hybrid nature of the team really allows Florian to have so many different options. I like Nick's end, though, as well, because they've got Porygon 2 to be able to obviously set up Trick Room mode for that Kingambit, and Kingambit with that priority also works well out of Trick Room. But when you're Florian and you've brought the Incineroar and the Urshifu, both of which resist Dark, it's still like a bit of an uphill battle for the Kingambit, which only has Dark coverage, so it's quite easy to make the Kingambit a bit useless, even when you switch an Incineroar on it with the Intimidate.
And I think at that point, it puts a lot more emphasis on how important the Fluttermane is for Nick and being able to utilize it to remove those threats. Fortunately, in that game, turn 1, you kind of made the trade-off where you lost it early on, where those 2 Pokemon in particular were in the back. So when it came to the opportunity to do it, you didn't have the Fluttermane anymore, and it really made it difficult to kind of close that game out. Maybe we see an adjustment as we are getting into game 2 here.
Yes, an adjustment is exactly what we see here, as we've seen the Gouging Fire now as the option on Nick's end, and for Florian it is that Ogerpon and that Fluttermane as it was in game 1.
Yeah, this is a really nice adjustment here from Nick. I think the Gouging Fire in particular puts a little bit more pressure onto that Fluttermane and makes the need for Florian to maybe look at going for a Follow Me here, which then opens the door for Nick. If that is what is to play out, you could potentially switch out your Fluttermane into something in the back like the Ogerpon, where you could go for a Howl and really get your attack boosted, set you up going forward in this game. But again, pretty risky in front of that Fluttermane. If it does decide to Terastallize here and start throwing out those Dazzling Gleams, there's only so many of those you can take because of the boost of that Choice Specs item that it's got access to.
We're going to get straight into this game 2 of the Grand Finals of the Dortmund Regional Champions here. Florian is 1 game away from taking the crown. Nick, going on the defensive at the moment, switching out the Flutter Mane into that Rillaboom. Going to be able to take those attacks on Florian's end so much better. Another switch up for Nick in this game, which seems to be already a very nice switch up.
And we are going to see the terrestrialization from Florian's side of the field, and it looks like it will be into that Flutter Mane once again. So effective for him in that game 1, leaning on it again going into game 2 to try and carry himself to that championship. But we'll see how this plays out in front of the Gorging Fire and that Rillaboom as the Burning Bulwark comes out from the Gorging Fire. Not wanting to take any damage this turn.
Let's see if a burn might come out from this Oakmon if it targets into it. Not yet, no. That Follow Me is the only thing going to coming out at the moment, keeping that Flutter Mane very safe, but to no avail at least on this turn. But the Moonblast does target into the Rillaboom, doing over 50% as well. But thanks to that grassy terrain, Rillaboom might be starting to get itself out of range of it again, and especially with suppressing it with a Fake Out in the following turn, that's definitely going to be the case.
Yeah, really nice play here from Nick, taking a lot of damage from that Moonblast, but putting himself into a position where now you've got that Fake Out, you can pressure the Flutter Mane, and you can take advantage of that Howl, which then sets you up to start really doing the damage, try and get that momentum swing going into the rest of this game.
Now the question is, has Florian brought the Farigiraf? Because if not, Rillaboom's Grassy Glides are going to be really strong in this match, as well as that Fake Out. And yeah, no bot Fake Out at all. Incineroar does take that on the switch in. As you mentioned, Lee, that Howl comes out now, boosting the attack of not only this Gouging Fire, but also the Rillaboom to be even more scary going into next turn. But first, Ivy Cudgel into the Gouging Fire, taking it very well, honestly, and healing up a little bit more of that grassy terrain. Nick positioning himself well in this game this time.
Yeah, really well, and putting on a lot of pressure. And Florian reacting really well. Getting the Incineroar in, kind of overwriting the Howl that just came out with the Intimidate, making sure everything's staying at neutral. But now the problem is it's out on the field. You do have a turn where you can utilize that Fake Out. But if you do that, then the next turn you've got to worry about trying to get the Incineroar off the field so you've got that Intimidate to cycle back in if the Howl is something that you are going to sort of rely on.
And for two physical attackers, Breaking Swipe is not what you want to see. So Nick going for the exact move that looks the best right now, and that certainly is that. Ivy Cudgel into the Rillaboom, putting it just on half yet again. Perhaps in range for Flare Blitz. High Horsepower is first, though, coming out now, doing a good chunk to that Incineroar. But yeah, Flare Blitz following up is definitely going to be enough, even after that Breaking Swipe attack drop into that Rillaboom.
Yeah, the Rillaboom getting some nice damage into that Incineroar with the high horsepower. Not quite enough there. Not really being able to utilize the Howl because of the Intimidate. And the Incineroar, as we know, very well trained, able to take that attack pretty comfortably and survive, stick around for another turn. We are going to see Nick look like he's going to lean a little bit on that Flutter Mane here, bring that onto the field now, in a position where it probably is going to be able to pick up a knockout onto that Incineroar, remove it from the field, and then, even go for the Ogerpon here, because that is an option where you see maybe the Incineroar switches out, but it is risky if you are Florian to switch it straight out into something else, because potentially you're incoming in on a Terrestrialized Moonblast or something like that, whereas the Gouging Fire in a position now where it can just go for those Howls, it can go for those attacks to lower the attack on the physical attackers on the opposite side of the field.
It's going to be the Terra Fairy for Nick, as they've done so much across this whole weekend. That's been so successful for them, boosting up the power of all those fairy moves. And I think we did see that lock into the Moonblast potentially. But first, another Howl for this Gouging Fire to boost its own attack to be able to do some more damage in the later turns, particularly if the Incineroar starts switching around. But it's staying in, though, for this Dazzling Gleam. It's probably going to go down. Yes, it is. And Ogerpon is now straight away in range of another attack going into the next turn. But it's not going to be before Ogerpon gets off another attack. That is that Ivy Cudgel. But it's weakened by the Breaking Swipes. It's not going to do as much as it was before, but still a lot of damage, Lee. And even with the grassy terrain, it looks like it's still in range of another one.
It will be in range of another one, but the Gouging Fire doing everything in its power to kind of support, disrupt, and put itself in a really strong position going into this next turn. The Flutter Mane on Florian's side of the field now coming back into the fray. It is going to be in a position where it can throw out some big damage. So has to be careful, though, around that Gouging Fire. The Ogerpon still has access to the Follow Me, but with the opposing Flutter Mane on Nick's side, it can potentially remove it, and then that would leave an opening for the Gouging Fire to get maybe something like a Heat Crash into the Flutter Mane, and with those boosts that it's got, going to be able to do some big damage if not pick up the knockout. But it all, again, comes down to what the trainers decide to do going into this turn.
And of course, the Incineroar has come in and lowered the attack of this Gouging Fire earlier in the game. So where a Heat Crash might have been able to pick up a one-hit KO on the Florian Splatterman, it may not this time. But it's going to be a follow me, so we'll never find out, at least on this turn anyway, as we do see the Heat Crash probably coming out now from this Gouging Fire into the Oakham. This should be enough for that KO, but this Fluttermane is left open now. Again, Choice Specs, Terra Fairy, it's a Fluttermane as well. Dazzling Gleam coming out into both of these targets. Nothing's resisting it so far, but they do and take those hits. Just be able to survive, but again, in range of another one.
Yeah, and the interesting speed interaction here is that the Gouging Fire is actually faster than the opposing Fluttermane. And now with the Incineroar being taken down, Florian doesn't have a way to weaken it any further with those Intimidates. And the Fluttermane can't protect either, so it is in a really awkward spot where it can't really do anything about it. It is pinned at almost at the moment, and if the Heat Crash comes into that spot, there is a good chance that it can take it down as well. Obviously, the Urshifu coming onto the field now, but the big thing is that Ogerpon next to the Gouging Fire that can protect it with those follow me's.
Yeah, exactly. That Sucker Punch is a real threat for the Gouging Fire, but with the Ogerpon following me, it does obviously keep itself safe. But then the Gouging Fire needs to get off some sort of attack, but with that attack drop from the Incineroar, it's still very much keeping this Fluttermane alive at the moment. Obviously, it's a weight-boosted move, and Fluttermane is not the heaviest of things, but yeah, let's see. It is a follow me. Nick's calling for that Sucker Punch right now, and it is not, though. Heat Crash into the Fluttermane. Let's see if this is stuff it needs to be, and it is! It gets the one-hit KO!
That's a huge turn here for Nick to step a bit further into tying this matchup to take it to a game 3. A huge Heat Crash here as the Wicked Blow comes out from the Urshifu into that follow me of the Ogerpon, but it is going to be the Fluttermane in the back for Nick and this Gouging Fire against this solo Urshifu.
Yeah, absolutely massive. Nick, thanks to those howls earlier, being able to counteract the Intimidates on Florian's end, has been able to maintain enough offensive pressure to be able to get that KO on that Fluttermane. A really, really crucial turn here. And there's the Sucker Punch into the Fluttermane. It is not enough. And so the Heat Crash will go into this Urshifu single strike to be able to squish it.
And followed up by a Moonblast. This is going to tie the game up for Nick and take us to a game 3 here in Dortmund. Both trainers wanting this championship and showing that they're going to give everything to take it away.
They certainly have, Lee. Oh my goodness, there's so much going on at the moment. You could see how Florian kind of stuck with his, the main things from the first game. And as we saw, Nick absolutely responded perfectly well to those, the adaptions that Florian potentially made away from that Ursaluna. Now, Nick really needs to think about as to whether Florian makes some more adaptations going into the next game. Maybe the Ursaluna Blood Moon is the call going into the next turn, because we had a very fast Gouging Fire with that booster energy, and the very fast Fluttermane at the same time as well, and there was no Porygon 2 or King Gambit mode at all brought. So Nick calling what Florian was going to bring very well, but Game 3 is a totally different game.
Yeah, and all the mind games begin now. What do each trainer want to lean on to try and get them to that title, that championship title? Of course, you've got the Gouging Fire that Nick played so well in that last game, taking advantage of those howls, the right time, getting rid of the Incineroar so those Intimidates weren't an issue anymore, setting up that end position where the Heat Crash was enough to get the Fluttermane, and also supporting other members of the team, maybe detracting a little attention away from itself because of those attack boosts, using the Rillaboom as well in a really nice way to kind of utilize the fake out, force the Fluttermane off the field because it had terrestrialized here. So we'll come down to what the players do adapt to in this next game. Maybe, like you say, Florian does look to that Ursaluna. Maybe that is the option here. And if you can get the Trick Room up, especially if the Porygon 2 doesn't come from Nick's side of the field, then that could be the way to go. You're going to then underspeed everything and have a way easier time of closing this matchup.
100% Lee. It really does depend on what these trainers do lock in. Either way, Nick has been so good using those Fluttermanes as well, with that Terra Fairy in Trick Room, out of Trick Room to do so much damage. But here we go. Yes, Florian has made the switch up in this Game 3. Incineroar and Farigiraf, and it's Fluttermane and that Gouging Fire in this final game of the Dortmund Regional Championships.
Yeah, here we go. Maybe a Trick Room is coming out from Florian's side of the field. He looks like he's setting it up with that Incineroar there, getting an all-important Intimidate down into that Gouging Fire early on, forcing it to go for either the switch to reset that or a Howl this turn, really taking up some time doing that though. The Fluttermane in a position as well where it's probably not going to be able to knock out that Farigiraf in one hit, allowing it to get that Trick Room up. Maybe even the Incineroar not worrying about the Fake Out, going for a parting shot here.
Yeah, it makes sense. Get the Gouging Fire out of there. You've received an Intimidate. It's obviously very fast with that booster energy. And Nick has likely seen that they're not able to stop the Trick Room, at least this turn. So might as well go for that Terra Fairy. Make sure you can take any Throat Chops very well if they do come out this turn as well. Oh, but Florian calls the Terra, goes for the Fake Out straight into that slot as the Farigiraf gets the Trick Room absolutely for free.
That is a huge turn, a real big prediction here from Florian, calling that Nick goes for that Fairy Terrestrialization because the Fake Out would have failed otherwise, but catching the Terrestrialization, getting the Fake Out, and ensuring the Trick Room is set up without taking any damage at all.
Florian's absolutely in Nick's head right now at the moment because, as we saw, Nick was maybe locking in that Dazzling Gleam. It wasn't even necessary for any sort of Trick Room setup, but it was obviously very, very impactful here. To have all that health still on Florian's side is going to be very impactful into the later stages of this game. Now, Incineroar is obviously threatening a lot of damage on both sides with Flare Blitz. Farigiraf in a position where it can start to switch around because I would guess, Lee, there's an Ursaluna in the back.
It feels like there will be an Ursaluna in the back. The problem is with having Trick Room up now is that you can't really parting shot out because you want the Ursaluna to come in for free. The Incineroar, though, going for a big double up into that Fluttermane, taking advantage of the fact that it cannot protect. Flare Blitz into that slot, taking it down.
Makes a lot of sense there. Depends what the Oakmon does here. Does it target into that Incineroar to try and get rid of a hit? Yes, it does. Bonk into that Incineroar. It is not quite enough, though. Incineroars are trained very well these days to take some of those more common moves, namely that Ivy Culture from Oakmon.
Yeah, and I think if you're Florian in this situation, you may want the Incineroar to go down here, or maybe not, because it does give you a bit of an advantage against the Rillaboom that has come onto the field, especially if you are wanting to preserve that Intimidate for later on in this battle to cycle in on these physical attackers that are now on the field. But the Farigiraf still a very healthy position here. The Rillaboom can't utilize that Grassy Glide. It can't utilize the Fake Out to disrupt like it normally has. It has got access to that high horsepower. Do need to watch out for that. And of course, the strong grass moves as well that it's got access to from the Ogerpon.
Yeah, the only way this Rillaboom is going to be able to stay safe from this Flare Blitz if it's the Follow Me comes out from the Ogerpon, but it's going to be a big ask though. Psychic is going to come out instead. It is actually straight into that Rillaboom. With this Obvest, it's going to take that very well. And there's the following up Flare Blitz into that Rillaboom as well. It's another KO for Florian. Still 4-2 up right now. He's going to maybe even do it this time. We'll have to see. This Ogerpon though can still follow up for another turn, and it's going to be that Ivy Culture most likely into that Farigiraf now that the Incineroar's gone down to the recoil. But Horn Leech, another good call from Nick though.
Yeah.
Allows yourself to be healed up a little bit with that HP. But yeah, with the Farigiraf, it's healing up itself with the grassy terrain. So now it's the Ursaluna. There it is coming in. That was so good for Florian in the later stages of today.
Getting some huge trades off between just the Farigiraf and the Incineroar. Probably more than Florian expected there, but getting it to go down, not having to switch that Ursaluna in to take any damage, getting it in a nice position now where it is going to be able to pressure both the Ogerpon and the Gouging Fire on the opposite side of the field. And this is not the position that you want to be in if you're Nick. You need to get through these Trick Room turns. Have you got enough between these two Pokemon to be able to do that in front of a Blood Moon Ursaluna that could terrestrialize this turn?
I don't know if Nick does, honestly, Lee. I don't know, because Florian's played this so well. That Fake Out first turn into that Terra Fairy Fluttermane was so big to get so much mileage, because look how much healthy that Farigiraf is, for instance. But here is a Terra on Nick's end. Well, it's not on Nick's end even. It is actually on Florian's end into the Ursaluna, being that normal Terra. The Farigiraf keeping it very safe from any sort of moves. And it is that Blood Moon, completely unopposed at the moment. No protects out from Nick's end. Let's see where it is targeting. It seems that Oakmon, another one-hit KO.
That is a huge knockout and another step closer. Florian takes to closing this out and becoming our champion here, but not over yet. The Gouging Fire still has a move to go. The Psychic coming out from the Farigiraf into that slot, doing some nice damage here as a Howl comes out, but it might be a turn too late for this Gouging Fire that can't support its partnering Pokemon any longer with that Howl.
Yeah, a last-ditch out for Nyx on the gouging fire there in victorious, because either way, a German player has won Dortmund Regionals. Earth Power into that gouging fire. That's going to be enough for the KO. Florian Temme wins the Dortmund Regional Championships.
What an incredible showing here from Florian. A huge congratulations to that performance. What a masterpiece there to close this out and become our Dortmund champion. Incredible showing, the adaptations from game 1 to game 2, taking us all the way and adjusting right at the last minute with that Ursaluna.